Okay, Mheshimiwa, welcome. And just from your busy schedule, let me first of all start by saying thank you for creating time to speak to us. We begin from a very traumatizing position as a country. About 16, actually 16 girls have died. The statements are coming out, but no one is being held accountable. And it looks like we are actually forgetting it, just like we forgot the Russia issue. We begin from your statements, your own statements. Do you think it's time we abolish boarding schools?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you.
Yeah.
And thank you for being kind by thanking me from my busy schedule. You know that cliche is used all the time. What would I be doing? I'm a public leader, and engaging in public debate and doing the kind of things I'm doing with you is what I'm expected to do. What would I be, a busy schedule doing what? You know, that's how the public sometimes has kept doing PR with public leaders even when they are not doing what they are supposed to be doing. We try to be nice to people who are wasting everyone's time. Our responsibility is to do what we are doing. Talking to you now as a Kenyan citizen and through you to the people of Kenya is what I'm expected to do. So you don't have to thank me. I'm just doing my duty and I'm doing it well. But thanks for being kind and courteous.
Thank you.
You know, the incident, I've been a little bit restrained, you know, in commenting about what happened in Utumishi. For this simple reason, you know, I always argue that sometimes when you have been in a role, in a public role, and you stepped out of that role, the first rule of thumb is that you want to give those who are now playing that role an opportunity to make their contribution. You know, when you start making sideline commentaries about what they are doing, you create an impression that you are being impatient, you know, intemperate, and sometimes unnecessarily critical, which I have tried to avoid. So that's why sometimes when issues arise in the security sector or in the education sector, I am a bit restrained in commenting because I know that there are colleagues of mine who have come after me after I've played a role in those dockets, and it's their turn to also make their contribution to their country. And then we always start from the position of good faith. You assume that those ladies and gentlemen, I have no reason to believe they don't love their country. I have no reason to believe they're not patriotic enough or they're not serious enough to do what they're supposed to be doing. But that said, I have to be very frank and say this.
Yes.
I am as angry and as irritated as many Kenyans. Because 21 kids burned to ashes in Russia. You are in the media, let me ask you a question. Have you seen any report from any institution in Kenya on what happened in Russia?
We have not seen that report.
The Education Committee in Parliament, we have an Education Committee in the Senate, we have the institution of Parliament itself, which could actually form an all-parties inquiry into that matter. The Ministry of Education, there is nothing. No one knows. Today, and you guys in the media are very informed people. Many of you are very intelligent. You come across information. You are seated on the junction of information. Do you know what happened? If someone asked you what actually happened in Russia, do you have an answer to that question?
We don't have the answer.
You see, that is it. The point is, the recklessness, casualness, the sense of irresponsibility on the part of government, it's a joke, honestly. I mean, for a country of our size and the people are serious the way we are. Now, Utumishi arrives. Our leaders are busy there praying. You know, they sit there, all of them. The people within the critical leadership and decision-making community of the country. They're holed up in a hotel, we're praying. Then they rush there with casualness. Sometimes you feel they're rushing there for pictures. And now, all manner of propaganda is being funneled around. You see things in social media and so on. Yet, by the way, there's no serious society anywhere in the world that loses its children in the manner in which we are losing our kids, whether they are burning to ashes in schools, whether it's through the chronic challenges of femicide, or alternatively, how young kids are being stolen in Nairobi and so on. And then they keep quiet and people behave as if it's normal. It is not.
But during that prayer, Mheshimiwa, we saw them pray for the country, and at the end of the prayer session, they actually say they were praying for the children.
Okay, that's fine. Prayer is good, but prayer is not supposed to be in lieu of action. The issue is, I cannot understand how we would be seated there, you know, all of us, 6 hours, 8 hours later, you know, our leaders are seated there. And for me, it concerns me. Let me say this, by the way.
Yes.
With the number of children who died in Russia, our president did not go to the school. with the number of kids who died in Utumishi, our president did not step in the school. There was an investigation in Coast region that exhumed bodies that nobody knows how many there were, what was happening, whether it was cult worship or something else. Our president did not go there, has never made a comment about it. Whatever you do, whether you're going to exhume 100 bodies or what have you, that's not a matter that our president cares about or mobilizes government to emotionally deal with. In many cases, in the US, the president is called the mourner-in-chief, the empathizer-in-chief, and so on. That is why, traditionally in Kenya, the head of state is called the father of the nation. So this casualness, you see, ends up looking like a pattern or, a very reckless way of life of not dealing seriously with the work that we are supposed to do. I had 2 incidents, I have to say here openly, I had 2 incidents of fire when I was Minister for Education.
Yes.
One at Moi Nairobi Girls, another one at the Tero Boys. The Tero one, I was there, and we called to account all those who were involved. It was a clear case of arson, but perpetuated especially because of the recklessness of the leaders of the school at that time. And we acted firmly, decisively, as expected. In the case of Moi Nairobi Girls, I think some bit of litigation on that is even going on to this day. We called those to account and moved on and decisively acted on it. Point I'm making, when incidents of that kind happen in our schools, the point of departure is to investigate them thoroughly and get to the bottom of it. Then to use them as a basis of working with those who are in the sector to avoid recurrence, so that it does not happen again. Now, when you read all these stories, and I've been seeing some of it on social media about what happened in Utumishi, a question I keep asking myself every day, there must have been a principal in that school who has a structure, of boarding masters or boarding mistresses, and so on and so forth. Here is something I would like to share with Kenyans.
Yes.
When I was Minister for Education, every time I went to a school, of course, first when I started visiting schools myself, politicians would, argue, I'm harassing, I don't know who, because you see, I asked one of them who is complaining, who is aggrieved in this case, because you are not the principal, you are just a politician. Because the parents loved it, the teachers loved it, the students loved it. Why? Because that is how, as a minister, you come to terms with the conditions and the circumstances going on in schools. I would like to be on record on this. I've said this several times before. Education is not provided at the Jogoo House. Those are papers and files and desks that are there. Education is provided in our schools. That's where our children learn. And the Act, the Education Act and the legislation, the consequential legislation on the education sector in terms of policy and the legislative ecosystem vests the responsibilities of our schools in the minister, which means you've got to be accountable. And ultimately, of course, the minister is acting on behalf of the president because he's holding delegated powers from the president as an appointee of the president. So that's why I like the phrase Uhuru Kenyatta used all the time, my children. He used to tell us, if my children in schools are not fine, I'll sort you guys out. What it means is, if you don't go there, how would you know what's going on? So I would go to schools, and I was very, very observant. I would spend, and I would not do touch and go. In some schools, I would hang out for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and I would walk around with the principal, go to the dormitories, the dining, sit out with kids and eat with them. Why? That is how I knew, I would very easily observe the relationship between the principal and the teachers in the school. I would observe the relationship between the principal and the students. I would very easily observe the general learning ecosystem, because even if people are putting up an act and pretending, they will not pretend for 2 hours or for 3 hours. Some things will come through, they will fall through the fingers and you'll see them. So I would walk around, with the principal to the dining hall, to the dormitory, and so on and so forth. I would be able to tell how the principal behaves, whether that's the first time he or she is also getting there. And if there's an issue, she cannot answer me or he cannot answer me, I can tell they are not very careful about what they are doing. Fortunately, many of the schools in our country, and I say this in defense of our teachers, many of the schools, every time I went there, I not only loved most of the teachers and the principals I saw, but I became their champion. I went to a school in Nakuru, drove into a school one afternoon where I found the principal, the headmistress, was keeping her sick child in her office. She had gone to see a doctor with the child, came back, and I asked her, Mommy, why didn't you take the child home? Say, no. It's about the time when the kids are going out for the afternoon break, and I didn't want to go home in case I was delayed. So I decided, let me keep the child here, and I will move around and see things happening. I saw the commitment and the love that a teacher like that had for their kids. You can tell this is a responsible teacher, this one is not responsible, this doesn't know what's happening, this one is lying, and so on and so forth. That is why we should do this. So there are people in that incident who should be called to account. I don't think we should be confining our debate to which students were doing what have you.
Who are these people?
We have an inspectorate department.
Yes.
When I looked at that dormitory, I asked myself the question, were safety standards kept in this school? Who was there? If I had arrived in that school as a minister, the first thing I would have asked to see is the principal's visitors book and asked the principal, when were the inspectors there last? I would have looked for the sub-county director of education and the quality assurance people and the inspectorate and asked them when they were in the school last. And what did they see when they were there last, including the county officers? Did they see those grills? I will have asked the principal how the structure of managing the school operates, who is in charge of boarding activities, how can fire break out at 2 o'clock, and then the world decides to know that about 3 a.m. in the morning. There are fundamental questions to be answered. And you see, this evasive and reckless way in which we are handling affairs, the tragedy of it all, my brother, is that it's going to affect all of us. It's not politics, it's not who's right, who is in, who's out. It is the fact that if we don't do the right things, we create a culture of mismanagement and people just keep getting away. Like now, I honestly won't tell you for the life of me what happened in Nedarasha. And I should know as a public leader, and all public leaders need to know this. And the Education Committee in Parliament should have a documented report on it. And the Minister of Education should have drawn lessons from it.
I would still take you back to the schools that, banned while you were in office, the two you just mentioned. And you said you sorted a few things here. What were the guidelines that your report made that the government has not followed? After, what were the lessons that were learned from the two schools, the two cases? And what were the guidelines put in place to make sure that the other children are safe?
After the big fires of the late 90s and early 2000s, because by the time I was going to Jogo House, to be very honest, a lot of good work had been done. You know, sometimes it's not sensible to pretend that, to play prima donna and say, oh, I am the one who knows everything, who brought everything. No. The Secondary Schools Heads Association, for example, over the years, and successfully over the years, has done a fantastic job in looking at, what goes on in schools. Because the Heads Association comprises the principals who actually run the schools. And most of these are very smart people. They do a very good job. In fact, when we started working on even the integrity of exams and stuff like that, we started with the Secondary Schools Heads Association reports. They know what goes wrong. They know what ought to be done. They're the ones who do this job every day. And then I started engaging with them on a regular basis, where you meet with them, you call up some heads, you create a caucus of high school principals, and every so often, once a month or once a quarter, you have lunch with them, and you randomly select them. You get the principal of Agoro Sare, the principal of Mutiangi Girls, the principal of Bishop Katimu Ngandu Girls, or some, you sample them across the country, principal of Galbatula, and you invite them. You have a chat with them, because then it gives you a sample and a more realistic, accurate picture of what is going on in the schools. So they had worked on fantastic proposals. The ministry itself had worked on very good safety standards. There is nothing to reinvent the wheel about. Where we have weaknesses and where we have challenges is in implementation, in enforcement, in supervision to ensure that this is done, and obviously, most obviously, ensuring that there is consistency and regularity in the way in which we do this all the time. And this is enhanced when everyone does their bit. There's no single individual that God has created in this world who has got the capacity to do everything that needs to be done. It always has got to be striving to build a very strong team spirit, relying on the others, consulting regularly with the leaders in the sector, working with them, removing any hurdles they may have because of the government bureaucracy and challenges, and putting teams together. One of the things that I am proud of the work we did at the Ministry of Education was to pull the agencies together. You will not succeed in ensuring that you manage schools if you're not working with the provincial administration. You know, during the amendment of the Constitution and later on, you know, the amendment of the law, we made a mistake and threw away provincial administration from the management of schools. Long time ago, the district commissioner, now the county commissioner, used to be the chair of the district education committee. And then that was removed because people had these ideas about, wrong, of course, most of them wrong ideas. The provincial administration was the problem.
Yeah.
That the provincial administration was interfering too much. The truth of the matter is that they wanted free hand sometimes to do wrong things and so on. Yet, you know, you need to put together the security sector and the education sector because they both need each other as you go forward. So even if the law does not exist, surely, I mean, common sense is not alien. In a situation like that, you create synergies and ask people to work together. And constantly you show respect for each other. And when people play their various roles, they help you move forward.
Okay.
So the safety standards are there. They have been instituted over the years. What needs to be done is enforcement.
So where is the problem?
As I said, the problem is enforcement, effective implementation, consistency in supervision of this, and then weaknesses that are in the bureaucracy. You know, when people fail to do their work and they get away with it, you know, whether they bribe and so on. Honestly speaking, and let me say this, it may be insensitive to some people, but please forgive me if you feel hurt about this. I don't understand how, if I was the Minister for Education, I would allow that in the Russia school to continue operating. I don't understand how I would allow it. When 21 kids are burned to ashes and I don't have an explanation, you can call me whatever you want. I don't see how they can actually have a license to continue running a school with that level of recklessness.
What would you have done?
Close it.
But if it has improved the standards, maybe?
Take away the licenses until I give them an A on the standards they are going to enforce. You see, our greatest enemy in the public sector, my brother, is one word: compromise. That's our greatest enemy. Compromise. You compromise here, compromise there, compromise there. And in most cases, when you see all these compromises, the sum total of those compromises is disaster. You know, you go to a place. Let me give you a classic example. When I was at the Ministry of Interior, I used to, there's no police station I drove by without going in, whether or not I had an appointment. And one time, I want to spare the officers for today. I was in Western Kenya, and I was driving from the headquarters to go to Kisumu to catch a flight. And then I said, it's a police station. I drove in. When I arrived at the police station, the first thing I asked for is the book.
The OB?
No, not the OB. There's a regular record in every police station signed by the senior police officers when they visit. And I was with the county police commander. When I looked at it, he had been there 7 months earlier. So I asked him the question, this police station, you can actually walk here from your office, and you were here 7 months ago. So I mean, can you convince me that you are a serious guy?
What did you do?
You don't know. I called his boss. You know, that's what is supposed to happen. And you know, even as minister, you don't have powers to discipline police officers. The law is very clear.
But we've seen some ministers do that. They pronounce
that.
And
That's not the law. That is chaos. That's anarchy. The country cannot be managed in that chaotic manner. And then that's why they are performing disasters. They're performing. There is a procedure. You call the boss. Their boss is the Inspector General. And you don't humiliate police officers, you know, because at that time I'm talking to him, his juniors are there. So I took him aside. I told him, my friend, can you convince me that you are a serious fellow? You were here 7 months ago. This police station, you can walk from your office to this place. So if junior police officers are frustrated here and they are committing suicide, you will not know. If they are living in the conditions they live, you will not know. You will not have an idea about what is happening. And what is public service actually? It is the contact between the officer and the service point. For you as a county police commander, your service point is where your officers are working from. That's where it is. And if you have no contact with your service point, you are what President Kibaki would describe as bure kapisa. You are not doing what's supposed to be done.
Mheshimiwa, because time is running, I would want to get you back to my first question. Do you think it's high time we go by your word and do away with boarding schools in this country?
The answer is yes, but you see, it's not a switch-on, switch-off affair. Public policy must be implemented with a measure of care, wisdom, and pragmatism. Otherwise, you can also again cause chaos in the process. If we worked gradually on the free day secondary education program as we envisioned it when we were in government, so that you continue availing enough resources for day schools to increase the enrollment and provide quality education as they go along, making education much more affordable, you will reduce the need and the demand for boarding schools as it is. Because the challenge was the day schools are not very well funded, so they don't have enough facilities. Parents decide to move kids to places where they can probably find better facilities and so on, or keep them away. There are places you go to, in one of our countries in Eastern Africa, they have day schools that have got 4,000 kids. Day schools that have got 3,000 kids, and so on.
Yes.
When we started this arrangement, there are even some day schools in some parts of our country that have got big population, but not as big as in one of our neighboring countries in the region. When we started this process, we even asked our officers to go and see what happens in those places. It is because of consistent. That is one of the reasons, or that's one of the bases upon which we were influenced to start now focusing on growing and strengthening day schools, so that we provide a free day secondary education and so on. Then that way you reduce the appetite for boarding schools until we end up with a situation where you will never, ever, ever do away 100% with boarding schools. There is no society that has done that. But in many societies, even in the developed world in the north, in the economic north, the boarding schools are much, much fewer than day schools. They are reserved for the wealthy and the richest people. And most dimensions of them are actually private, because to pass muster and to meet the conditions to keep kids in school overnight is not child's play. So if we strengthened, we remained consistent on that particular trajectory and stayed there for about 10 years or so, would slowly but surely, reduce them, as it is. So my most sensible answer to this is that if we work on it as a matter of public policy, and we are staying on it, and we remain consistent on it as we go along, we will achieve it. Inside 5 to 10 years, we achieve this. Plus now that we are living in an environment of education content liberalism, that you can access education content anywhere. Boy, AI is in town. We are moving to SR and so on. So you'll be able to provide, educational content as liberally as you can. We were discussing when I was in the Ministry of Education about moving education content, not just the digital platform, but ensuring that it's available on a device-neutral platform, so that you can access education content on your phone, on your TV, on your radio, and what have you. That's where the world is going. Look at what's happening in Finland. Look at what's happening in some of these other societies. You see, it's a comprehensive, focused way of managing the sector as it is. And it won't happen if government doesn't pay 100% attention to it, works responsibly on it, and focuses on it. So the answer is, that is the direction we should go. I believe in it very seriously.
Someone would ask you, the Minister of Education, how far had you gone with that process?
I think we had done most of the foundational work in terms of public policy changes. We done most of the foundational work was done, and actually taking advice and counsel from the practitioners, the Secondary Schools Heads Association, for example, and so on. We had begun, working on the foundational work that needed to be done. That public policy will ride on basically 3 critical pillars. Number 1, educational content development, accelerating that. Number 2, effective funding of day school education. And then number 3, ensuring that we have a sufficient broadband footprint, which I don't worry about these days with Starlink and everything else. I'm not bothered about that. In the Ministry of Education, we would worry more about content availability, affordability of the day school education, so that the quality, which sometimes forces people to go very far, to go to all manner of extents to keep their kids in boarding school, is addressed even in the day schools as it were, and then that sorts everything out.
Okay, Mheshimiwa, we have a discussion at Utumishi as we come close to the education conversation. Utumishi, 16 kids dead. And you said there are people who should have taken responsibility. Do you think the topmost leadership of this country should have taken a huge part of the responsibility? For instance, there have been conversations in social media and in newsrooms that even the CS for education and those who are in charge of security, because we are told that there were security apparatus just closer to the schools. These people should have resigned and left office. Do you think it's a move that it would have happened?
I don't want to be judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been in public service before, so I don't want to be flippant in the manner in which I comment about such grave matters. Mm-hmm. The questions that I would seek to answer first before, because what you're asking me is to make a conclusive or summative judgment of a situation that I have not, let's say, scientifically dissected. Because if I went to the scene, the first thing I would have done is spend my time on looking at the ecosystem in which that was happening, first of all. Mm-hmm. Then walk slowly, with a measure of such co-precision into exactly what happened and how it happened. Then you would very easily notice where the gaps were and how it got to where it got. And then call people to account as it is. Sometimes, we politicize situations that ought not to be politicized. Yeah. And when we do that, we don't make the right decisions. Let us go into this situation. That's why I'm saying when there's a tragedy in a country such as that one of Tunisia and so on, for a moment we should all just forget about politics. It's not about who is in, who's out, who's right, who's wrong, who's left, right, that kind of nonsense. We should just walk into that incident and ask ourselves the question, how would we have averted this? And we can only answer that question by, as I said, taking a very surgical, step-by-step trip or journey into that crisis. You will discover then that there are people you may call frontline actors, immediate actors, who ought to be called to account. Let me give you an example. Mm-hmm. When I went to this school, one of these schools where a fire had taken place, an incident had taken place, I was with the then Secretary of TSC, Nancy Masharia. We arrived there. Wonder of all wonders, the principal was not there. Because the previous day, he had gone to Mombasa to buy a matatu. He was not even when we arrived, when we flew there to the school and arrived there, he wasn't there. Now, honestly speaking, even if you are the most lenient and the most careless of public officers, how would you keep that guy in a job to start with? Then you start investigating them. Then you discover this is a successful case of irresponsible, reckless management of the school. And then you keep asking questions, talk to some students, talk to some parents, and so on. You discover it's been a long stretch of non-communication, non-engagement, hands-off, poor management of the school by the heads and so on. You remember, this is when we started the conversation on the localization of school heads. Mm-hmm. That, the heads need to actually live and reside in the school so that they have time to engage with the teachers, engage with the students on a regular basis. So in a case like this, why Utumishi is a special case is that, one, the school is associated with the police. So the assumption is that it has got, an indivisible institutional relationship with the security operation. There is a security institution nearby. And then, of course, like all schools, it has got leaders. So before you start now politicizing the question and giving blanket condemnations, minister, everybody should, that's how people go to things when they don't want to solve problems. If you want to solve the problem, you go into it, first of all, step by step. What happened? Who was responsible? Get all the events, act. Then document the report and say, on the basis of this is what has happened. And every incident, by the way, even in basic everyday management, every incident that happens or something goes wrong, it gives you an opportunity to improve. So you would use that opportunity to call all your inspectors in one room, or even call all your, let's call it assurance people, what have you, call them to a particular place. I would even call the entire region to a meeting in that school and tell them, if any of your schools in your jurisdiction looks like this, you are headed for a disaster of this kind. So please go back and tomorrow do one more round of your schools. That's how you avoid a problem. But you see, we now dwell on politics. You know,
Just on that
I'm
point,
a problem solver,
yeah,
and I am focused on problem solving. That's my way of life.
on politicizing that issue about school, some of the principals in the united opposition have actually been politicizing the same issue, and you guys meet and talk about matters affecting the country. Have you spoken to them and told them not to do that?
I can't pass judgment on my colleagues. You know, by
We
the
have
way,
seen them in the media talking about it.
there's no classroom where we sit or take a seminar on how we are going to respond to issues. And I cannot be petty enough to now start saying that my colleagues in the opposition and I should go to some place, pray, take a lesson on how to respond to issues, then go to respond. It doesn't work like that. Everyone responds to an issue how they respond to an issue.
But if you have a friend who is...
And it's not in my place to pass judgment on how Mr. X or Madam Y has responded to an issue. I have given you my responses, and it's just that I happen to be privileged and lucky that I served in that docket. So I have some experiential and institutional knowledge and historical information on what happened in the sector. That's it.
Okay.
But it's not in my place to pass judgment on anybody.
Okay, we're not going to talk about matters Ebola because of some reasons there. Let's get into politics as we wind up. The united opposition...
I thought you were talking about school. Now, why?
That's the last comment.
Yeah, okay.
You can have a comment on the united opposition politics. There have been, people coming together and saying, you guys will have, or rather the team will have one presidential candidate. The question is, what if the opinion polls at one point will show that Honorable Fred Matiang'i should support one other person from that coalition? Is that something that you'll buy into?
You know, I get asked this question every so often. I meet people. First of all, I think this country is unnecessarily fixated about individual leaders. Let us, first of all, even then, anyway, yes, I know leadership makes a difference. But let us even build a framework or a system. You know, whatever happens in the next elections, I cannot foresee a situation where one singular party wins this election and forms government as a singular party. It's going to be coalition building. And what is important in coalition building, first and foremost, is principle. The framework upon which you come together, what you agree to govern on, and so on and so forth. Once you have built this in the long run, sometimes actually it doesn't matter who leads the system. If you read coalition building experiences in Israel, in Germany, and many countries around the world, it is so much about what you are building. What are you about in the long run? Why us and not the other guys? What do we stand for? What are the principles? What are our core values? What do we want to do? At the moment, that's what we are spending our time on. When we meet, every time we meet, we keep having conversations on, okay, what would we do differently? What are the issues we are looking at? We've sat down, and yesterday we spent some time looking at Finance Bill 2026, and so on and so forth, trying to understand the origin and the background to some of the issues that are being raised right now, or what's happening in the Finance Bill. As we go forward, this fixation with who will actually be the flag bearer ends up negating the importance of all these conversations that we're having. And then second, you're asking me to make a decision, you're asking me to cross the river in advance.
No, just in case.
I'm on a journey, I'm on a trip. You're asking me to cross the bridge in advance. And by the way, when you get to Westlands, there's going to be a bridge. How are you going to cross the bridge? I haven't even seen it. Yeah. You want me to cross the bridge in advance. And this is precisely why...
But you know where you're heading.
This is precisely why we have a problem in this country. We spend all the time on empty modeling, vacuum modeling. Oh, maybe it's this way, maybe it's that tribe, and so on. And in all that useless debate, we forget the substance. The substance that we now need to focus on is how do we, as I told you, I'm a problem solver. And I'm focused on problem solving. Now, you see, we have issues we are dealing with right now.
But the opposition say...
Before we complete discussing the solutions to some of our challenges, you're asking me about something that's going to happen in 2027 somewhere there. I am not a prophet. I am not a soothsayer. I'm not going to cross the bridge before I get there.
But you'll have one candidate.
When I get there, I'll cross the bridge. Whichever way it's necessary to cross that bridge at that time, whether I swim or borrow a boat, what have you, I'll cross that bridge at that time.
But you see, they say that it is said that the opposition, one of its main goals is to take the president home.
No. no. That's not one. That's not even our main goal. Actually, it's not my main goal. Because you see what you are describing is a very simplistic situation. You are simply saying that all that we are spending time on sleepless nights is to replace Ruto. It's so that we go tell Ruto stand up, we sit there. We continue looting the country and mismanaging it the way he's doing it. That is not the way.
What is the goal?
To bring about real change you can feel. I would like, if I'm elected president, 90 days, 3 months later, when people come to Kenya, they say, wow, an election took place. There's a new president.
By?
Those are the changes that we are discussing right now. And I would rather spend time on those kinds of things. What would you do differently, you know, as it is? I've said so many times in many interviews here before that I am not looking for money. This kind of looting going on will never happen when I'm in government. You will not have goons around town walking around tuned from the police officers and so on and so forth. That is how somebody coming back will find out, oh, by the way, there's a new leadership in this country. We are not seeking to replace the president. So we tell him stand up. We sit on that same chair. We continue. If he's playing a game there, we continue playing the same game. That's not what we are doing.
Anything you do about security as it is right now? We've seen kids going missing most of the times in the country.
I'll pay more attention to the security sector than I think our colleagues in government right now are paying attention to. Because I'm calling them our colleagues because, you know me, I have to be very honest. I don't believe in lying to people around and pretending. I worked in the security sector for over 5 years as a Minister for Interior and Coordination of National Government. Most of the senior security officers in the country are people I know and people I worked with. The Inspector General of Police, I've said, I don't know how many times for those who care to hear, was my GSU commandant. I know a whole lot of them, Matiang'i and so on. I worked with them, the people I know. I mean, DCI, Nurdin, the Director General of National Intelligence Service, we worked with them. So these are people I know. They know me. We've worked together before. And I know that they are good officers. If they were paneled with less politics than they are now being pushed around with, they would do a good job. But I would pay more attention than I think is being paid to the security sector of the country. I've been seeing clips doing rounds where people on border are robbing motorists in Nairobi, the capital city of our country. I mean, sometimes it's very difficult to come to terms with some of those things. There are people who have told me practical examples. People have told me here in Karen, where people have had their mobile phones snatched and so on. My own staff, I've been to functions with my staff and they've come back without their phones. So this pickpocketing and the rampant challenges. I've seen where the president goes for meetings in Eastlands and the whole of that streets, people are robbed, handbags, whatnot, and so on. We can do better than that. I don't want to lose my cool because it's very annoying. For a country of our size, and 63 years after independence, I know the resources we have in the security sector. I know. I was Minister for Security. I know the capacity we have. So you can't tell me it's a question of capacity. It's a question of management, bad management, extreme interference. And actually, we are seeing an unprecedented case of ethnicization of the security command. It has never happened. I cannot remember of a time when you would go, for example, out of 19 commanders in Nairobi, 15 of them are in the hands of officers from one region. What are you doing? It's obvious what you're trying to do. You're ethnicizing. And obviously, those who do it don't understand one thing. You immediately undermine the morale of the officers you're working with. Immediately. Because people are not being assigned responsibilities because they are qualified. They're being assigned responsibilities because they come from the correct direction of the country. We go and look at the county commanders in the country and so on. I worked with senior, wonderful, very fine police officers. I mean, I can tell you, I remember almost all my regional police officers when I was Minister for Interior. Fantastic people. I mean, I loved them all. Every time I met them, wonderful people who would do a good job. When you ask, for example, where is Mboya, who was my regional police commander in Nakuru, where is he? Yeah, he's some desperate place where, I don't want to say, where is Manasseh, my former regional police commander in Nyeri? You hear those kinds of stories. The point is this. The moment you do that, when you actually undermine professionalism, and you fail to listen to the leaders of the command, you fail from day one. That is what happens. You fail. If there's a place you should never, ever, ever, ever introduce politics, it's the security sector. I trust everybody in the security sector. You will call them in the room. They're the ones who will tell you, this is a good commander, this is a good police officer, this is a good guy, this is an effective guy, and so on and so forth. And their work will show as you go forward. Now, those kinds of decisions that have been made thinly veiled or thinly covered politicization of the system is what is going to destroy and undermine the morale of the officers, the mismanagement of some of their very basic things like the medical cover, the insurance, and so on. These are things. This is what I would do differently. I mean, this is how we protect our country. That's how we provide the security of our country. And you can imagine, I don't even have to lie about this. It's something you would know, that having served in that docket, I have so many of those officers that I know. Many of them I meet every day. We call each other. I know so many of the officers I worked with, even in the provincial administration. When I ask who's so and so, then I hear it's an officer that I personally would not promote. It's the one in charge of a region, and so on. Like some cases which I see. The other day I met some very senior colleagues in the provincial administration, people I served with. Then I was asking them, who's with the changes of who's the regional police, whatever, who's the regional commissioner? Someone said, oh, by the way, do you imagine it's so and so? Then everybody rolls their eyes and keeps quiet. That is where it begins to go wrong. You don't go in there with anybody. You find the people you find there. There is no place anywhere on earth. We've worked in private, public, and everywhere. Efficient management and effective management of an institution requires that you pay attention to delivery of services, results. That's why I'll say this until the cows come home. I'm result-oriented. I am solution-focused. And that cannot happen where you're looking at people's ethnicities, which language they speak, where they come from. Men and women in this country, just give people the opportunity. Merit. And in the security sector, it's the best. You sit in a room, nobody will tell you who is a good officer than themselves, the bosses and those guys who are there. You ask them, I want somebody to head this assignment. They give you a guy. And they do. I mean, I remember so many examples when I was in public service with a lot of nostalgia and happiness. How I went up to my former colleague, late General Kaiseri, and told him, I'm having this problem in Keumwere, we are sorting this, the president has directed to do this, give us a guy who's going to command this. And then he says, let me sit down with the guys. And then he tells you, Njeru, you go, you meet him the first time, how are you then? And then when you step back and see how the guy is working, you feel nice. You are proud to be a Kenyan,
I want us to come to a close, but we can't come to a close without speaking about a very important issue, the finance bill. And the reservations about it. There is cries that there is increase in taxes, and some leaders from opposition say, or rather from the statement, that is a bill that says that the government never learned from the 2024 GNZ demonstration.
You see, that's the whole presentation. In fact, when we discussed the matter yesterday, we had a whole PowerPoint presentation, and I don't know whether I have a copy. I'll give it to you to look at. So, because it's better, instead of commenting on things in a very casual manner, I believe that people should go into things in a very substantive way. So I will look for a copy of the PowerPoint presentation we had yesterday and the work that our teams have put together. You also have a look at it. But the question you keep asking yourself is, if you increase income tax on rental income from 7.5% to 10%, obviously that is going to be passed on to the tenants. There's no landlord who's going to consume that. They will pass them to the tenants. The same tenants are the Kenyan workers. Kenyan workers whose pay slip has been raided beyond measure. The ones who are paying SHA, the ones who are paying housing levy, they are paying I don't know what, and so on. How will these people afford life? And for me, what concerns me, the bulk of our population that is now beginning to actively and effectively operate within the digital space, then you introduce, in addition to excise duty for digital services, you introduce new taxes in mobile telephony, new taxes in M-Pesa. What are you actually doing in the context where the price of fuel has gone up? Is life going to be afforded? You propose to tax Mitumba in the process. Then for the private sector and the business community in this country, why do you want to force us to do our reporting by April instead of June? It's obvious that the government has got financial challenges, so they're trying to see how they can harass you in good time. But of all those, some of the provisions and some of the proposals that are being made in the bill, I don't have an adjective to describe them, because I ask myself, do we live in the same place with our leaders? Let me give you a classic example.
Okay.
If you say that you want to give Kenya Revenue Authority powers to impound your accounts where there is a dispute, even before the dispute is resolved, what are you actually saying? That the Kenya Revenue Authority can arrive at your business environment and tell you you owe 40 million shillings, even if you know you don't. And when you are arguing with them, they start by freezing your accounts. My honest opinion is this. This is what I think.
Yes.
Honestly, this government is targeting opponents of the president and the administration. They are targeting business people to scare and intimidate them, not to support even the opposition. Because you see, for many of these businessmen, you will not contemplate even making a contribution to anybody who is not government. Because the following day, KRA will be at your door, and before you even say, before you even say the Lord's Prayer, they have impounded your accounts, and you have nothing to say. So the point is that we can't go on that way. You know, the Minister for Finance the other day wondered why I am saying the finance bill be rejected, yet I was a minister and we passed 10 finance bills. Yes, we did. My answer is very simple. We negotiated. We negotiated even with the opposition. We went to Parliament, we had discussions. And in fact, what we finally ended up passing was about half of what we wanted ourselves. Even after we have had conversations with IMF, with World Bank, with who, because we always believed in engagement. Democracy is government by deliberation. We discuss. No one has a monopoly of government. We engage, we talk about things and engage and see this is what needs to be done and so on and so forth. So I was saying then, I'm saying now, and I will always say, the bill should be debated and discussed in Parliament, and an opportunity should be provided to the legislators who are the representatives of the people to look at those tax proposals and so on. If they cannot be amended, it should be rejected in total. Because, for instance, the fraudulent movement of freehold land to leasehold, which means even the 2 acres your grandfather left behind for you is now going to be government land to be subjected to leasehold tax. I mean, what nonsense is that? Honestly.
Will our members of Parliament, maybe we can give them a chance and see if they can act on it moving forward?
They have a date with destiny. I mean, they swore to protect, defend, and uphold the Constitution. And they have a date with destiny. They have people to face next year. After they have done what they have done, they have the public to deal with. Because all of us, we shall be called to account one way or the other. If we are not called to account here on earth, we will go before the throne of judgment when the Lord comes. Thank you.
June is here. Just a message to your GNZs as they come to terms with the anniversary, and then please, if you may send your message also to the family and the friends of Utumishi, because I think we missed that. Maybe a message of condolence to them, maybe.
First, when it happened, immediately I sent a message of condolences. I've asked my staff to check how many of those children are still admitted in hospital. I would like to go and see them. And you know, I am doing this, of course, I have to confess, a measure of anger and frustration. Yeah. There are things that ought not to happen in our country. We are being irresponsible, plain and simple. We are being very, very irresponsible, reckless, and casual about responsibilities we need to do. Whether that reckless is at the boarding master level, or at the principal level, or at the wherever it is, we are actually being irresponsible, plain and simple. And time is here for us to have serious conversations at all necessary levels on the safety of our children and the safety of our schools and how we manage our schools. There are sacrifices to be made. It is not going to be easy. When we even debated, when I was Minister for Education, I was approached by religious leaders in the country across the board. We even debated the scheme of service for chaplaincy in schools, so that, you know, well-trained ministers or Muslim clerics, as long as they have been certified by religious organizations, would also be afforded an opportunity to be chaplains in schools, to also offer counseling services to our children and so on and so forth. I mean, things don't come easy. People make sacrifices for them to happen. And when you look at the crazy level of wastage in this country, we can afford money to give our kids the comfort that they need. So for that, I send my condolences and my love to those families. It's unthinkable that, a parent has to bury their kids. In Africa, we believe you raise up your children so that they bury you. I saw the father who had removed his shirt and was really, really agonized. And I could relate to that. I don't know if someone walked up to me. I mean, I don't even want to say those words. Yeah. I told you that the child is normal. It's unbelievable. It's something that ought not to happen, being irresponsible. Okay. On the Gen Zs and the 26th coming, as I said again, like all commonsensical observers, I am actually shocked. I raise these issues all the time, and it's not about politics. I am probably the most restrained of all the national players now. I normally don't hurl insults at people and so on. I just ask this very basic question. How could our parliament have been run down and our young people were demonstrating because they were aggrieved? They went to parliament, and parliament has never thought it sensible to even come together in an all-parties group and even answer this question: what actually happened on 25th of June 2024? Why did our young people come to parliament? Is there something we have not done, or is there something we are not doing right? Why did we... I keep asking myself, our leaders, and with tremendous respect, I respect all of them. If you went home today, and while you were reading your book in your study room, your children walked in and collected your books and your computer and everything and burned them and so on, isn't that something that you will spend days thinking what actually happened? Why did they do this and so on? And then document this. And most importantly, look for an opportunity. I mean, if I was in that situation, I would have had an all-parties inquiry and asked the Gen Zs now to come to parliament and ask, they now speak to us directly. Why did you do this? What happened? What are the issues? And so on and so forth. Same thing with the executive branch of government. Parliament is 2 kilometers away from State House. So, no one. And then we did all those usual abracadabra, blah, blah, change cabinet, and then we have gone on as business as usual. But it was clear, when you looked at the communication from the Gen Z and so on, it's abundantly clear that the concerns and the issues were outlined. So as we come to this point, 1 year to elections, my message is very simple.
Yeah.
To all Gen Zs and all young people in this country. That expression that happened on the 25th of June 2024, that energy and all the energy that we have available would have been wasted if we don't complete the job at the ballot in 2027. So now we are 1 year away from election, the time we need to execute our outrage. And let's go forth and do it. Because that is it. And I've been encouraging young people across the country, our own party, Jubilee. We want young people to occupy leadership. Everywhere I go in this country, I'm thoroughly impressed when I see the number of young people who want to run for a county assembly, want to run for parliament, whether it's a Senate or whatever. You feel nice. Because then you say there is hope for our country. Those are the energies that we need. So that those things that were, the homework that is undone, they can now physically come and do it. So they're not going to demonstrate to parliament. They're going to be seated there, making the decisions. And for me and others, our job is to provide them that opportunity.
Okay. Thank you so much for this
Asante
moment.
sana.
Asante.
Thank you so much.
Asante.